Good morning. It's a pleasure talking to you about a very important topic. The topic for today is the role of media in marketing, intercultural communication perspective. Very important. What is the role of media in marketing? And in terms of intercultural perspective, what should you actually look for when communicating to your audience? It's very, very important. Coming from Namibia, a country full of diversity, a country situated in the south of Africa. We really enjoy borders with South Africa, Botswana, Angola, Zambia. Within that environment, we really need to be able to communicate, and not just within the region, but in Africa in general and in the world. Namibia, for example, is a country with many languages. We do have different ethnic groups, Yoshivambo speaking, Oshirero speaking. Even within Oshivambo, you also have many dialects. Rukavango, we have also another speaking group, etc., etc., Silozi. So how do we make sure that when communicating to an audience, we portray what it should be? The same could be said about internationally. So what should you watch for when communicating to make sure that you really address your audience using the right tool, the right channels of communication, so that you deliver the effective message? So that is what we are talking today. But before that, it's important to understand what is culture, because lack of understanding of culture may lead to some of the communication mistakes that we have seen before in many adverts. Culture is the characteristic of a particular group of people, defined by everything from language, religion, cuisine, social habits, music, and arts. Why is it important to understand culture so as we are effective in communicating? Very important. One of the reasons is to avoid what we really call misleading or advertisements that really did not reach the targeted audience with the correct message. In other words, to avoid mistakes in advertising. For instance, you may have heard of the word cultural shock. So cultural shock happens when, for example, we travel or we get in touch with other cultures different to ours, and then we really get shocked because we were not aware of what the other cultures really entail. For example, is a feeling of uncertainty, confusion, anxiety that people experience when visiting, doing business in, or living in a society that is different from their own. How can we avoid cultural shock? We can avoid cultural shock by being engaged with people of other cultures, but also valuing people from other cultures and enjoying what they do, in as much as we also enjoy our own, so as to have, diversity. So advertising needs to take that element of appreciating other people's culture to make sure that our message is conveyed in a very appropriate and acceptable manner. What are some of the challenges? Pardon me. Challenges for cross-culture marketing. Challenges we have observed include creating or the creation of relevant content, creating a relevant that speaks to that culture or to the target audience. Also, the creation of attractive content. Content needs to be attractive so that it engages and people are interested. Ensuring no offense is caused when communicating to the audience. Also ensuring that the marketing message is not diluted because you have used the right words or the right channel and also the right content. So these are challenges, but by knowing the challenges, it's possible to overcome them beforehand to ensure that your message reaches the desirable audience effectively. Therefore, here are some of the tactics that we can put in place. Number one, acknowledgement of differences. Try to acknowledge that people are different, and the target market you are trying to pursue is also different. Acknowledge the kind of differences in that audience so that you address correctly when advertising. Very important, try to unite in common ground. For example, you may do things differently in your culture, which in a way is similar to that culture you're trying to target. So use a common ground and use that as a basis to create an effective communication message. Segmentation is also another strategy, which means you try, since you cannot target every group, try to segment them, break them into specific segments and address them differently with different messages. In that way, you are going to cut some of the barriers because of cultural differences. The last one, but not the least, you should use one message from different voices. In other words, in trying to address the different segments, try to use people that they can associate with. Use one voice for different messages. In other words, simply saying, try to use a voice that they relate with. For as much as you are one product, try to offer different perspectives or different voices in conveying the message. All right, so very importantly, Namibia, in recognizing the need to use these different strategies in communicating, it's a tourism attraction because Namibia is a very much attractive in terms of landscape, the sun, the dunes, the sea, and also the ecosystem in terms of wildlife and fishery resources. Namibia is positioning itself by creating very sound or strong advertising messages. And one of the components that they have used is the use of diversity in the country. So looking at this specific advert I'm looking at, you will see different ethnic groups together, for example, enjoying a meal. And that conveys a message of unity. Or in another instance, also to portray the cleanliness of the city, because Windhoek is a very clean city, as much as Swakopmund and Walvis Bay and other parts of Namibia. So the Namibia Tourism Board makes sure that the cleanliness of the city is portrayed in the message. And that way, they are using a common ground to really attract tourism that are coming from that perspective, seeking a clean city, a clean place to stay. So that's one of the strategies Namibia is used. Another strategy is also to use Namibia culture heritage promotion by looking at different indigenous groups. For example, the Ovaimba group or Shikwanyama group or Shirero group, in tailoring messages that are addressed to the specific groups, because tourism or visitors, for example, would be attracted by the different portrayals of the country's heritage promotion. So in a nutshell, comparing it to other parts of the world, because it's important to also have a world view perspective. Look at what, for example, Spain does in terms of differences in Europe. Spanish people, looking at the cultural aspect, they attach great importance to the character of the people they do business with. So it's important to them that the person doing business with the Spanish people also is that strong and good character. In Germany, for example, people attach the importance to the qualifications of the people they are doing business with. That's a general assumption, of course, in general terms. I'm not saying every individual, but that is the perception given there. In Switzerland, people feel reassured by knowing details. In England, people feel reassured by knowing the big picture, what is in the big picture. In Africa, it's about togetherness, how you can show that you are part of the community. So as having a collective approach to doing things, that's very important if you are to visit or you are to advertise the products in Africa. All right, therefore, in coming up with adverts, there are different appeals that you can come up with. There are several appeals to making your message very attractive. One, some people will use fear to come up with advertisement messages. Companies can also use humor, making fun of things in a good way, portraying good rapport and humorous messages. Or you can use rational or sexual or technology bandwagon type of appeals. And therefore, as you do that, be cognizant of the fact that culture plays a role when doing that. Don't just use humor for the sake of humor. Ensure that culture is taken care of. You know the culture when you bring it. Or even when you're using sexual appeal to advertisement, make sure that you use the right imagery so as not to create a situation where your product will not be accepted or your message will not be well taken. So in a nutshell, as we conclude this, it's important to understand culture. Culture makes a huge difference in advertising, and therefore, as media practitioners, as marketers, or as communities, we need to be aware of that and practice culture. And it will be much easier for you to implement it when you do business with people across the globe. Thank you.